This talk is called New Beginnings, Arrivals in English. And we're going to put into context the challenge of language learning and settling into a new community. So let me start by asking you this. Have you ever been in a situation overseas where you were totally unable to get your meaning across? And I also want you to think about how that made you feel at the time. Okay, hold that in your mind and let's hear a story from Andrew about his experience.
This happened when I was in Thailand and I went to a 7-Eleven. I wanted to get a cup of coffee, but I needed to be able to ask whether there was milk in the coffee because I'm lactose intolerant, so it's pretty important. But I didn't have the language. I don't speak Thai. And I couldn't work out how to get that message across to the person behind the counter. So I always remember that feeling. That is a feeling of inadequacy. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to work on this project, because it's fine for me being there on holiday. But what about if you actually live in the place?
Now, Andrew had this issue because,
This happened.
sorry. So Andrew had this issue because he didn't speak any Thai at all. But the same issue also presents itself when perhaps you've learnt a language exclusively in an academic setting. For example, I learnt Mandarin at school for 10 years, and when I needed it most, traveling across a Chinese city, and I got the train stations mixed up, the academic Mandarin that I learnt was absolutely hopeless in asking the locals what I really needed. So it's not that people don't want to help you. It's that you're missing something vital, like a password, if you like, that lets you through to the place where you start engaging with people, that lets you take the first steps to finding a place in a new community. And what is that password? It's the basic and practical English for functional communication. It's asking for a coffee without milk, asking the way to the station, being able to give basic answers to a doctor's questions in a clinic. So we set out with two key objectives for arrivals in English. The first was accessibility, and that means being able to use the language you learn immediately in any of the situations I just mentioned. So now you may well ask, in Andrew's situation, well, why didn't he just take out his phone and put "no milk, please" into Google Translate? And it's an interesting point, but with two key issues. So it may be effective in the immediate instance, but it doesn't give any sense of satisfaction of working to engage with another person. And it's also teaching dependence on these tools instead of teaching how to use the tools effectively for learning practice. Which leads to our second objective, teaching beyond the program. So tools like Google Translate are a huge advantage for language learners that we just simply didn't have before. So we wanted to help newcomers learn to get the best out of all of the amazing free tools that are available now, like Google Translate, YouTube, spaced repetition apps for vocabulary, italki, and loads more. So what I want to make clear is that this is a practical program answering a very specific need. It doesn't follow the kind of beginner level syllabus that you'd expect to see in a course for a foreign language school, for example. For example, there is no grammar syllabus in Arrivals in English. There isn't the same control of vocabulary because we need to equip learners with the vocab they need right away, even if the words seem difficult. The word allergic is a great example. So it's all about meeting the practical needs of real people in a new community. So when it came to design our syllabus, we developed the content in 3 key steps. We started with 2 major sources for our pedagogical underpinning. The language scales and descriptors of the CEFR, the Common European Framework of Reference for Language, and also the ACSF, the Australian Core Skills Framework. So these describe the kind of skills at the language level that our learners need to be able to master. So what's really useful is that these skills are expressed in real life terms. So I want to show you a couple examples. So if we look at the CEFR, the pre-A1 band, this is one example. So can make purchases and or order food or drink when pointing, or other gestures can support the verbal reference. And looking at the ACSF level 1, can introduce oneself and exchange greetings appropriately in an institutional setting, for example, at a Medicare office or a reception area at a hospital. So this is the solid theoretical framework that we were working with. We then consulted in detail with experts. First, we spoke to migrant associations. To give a couple of examples, the Afghanistan and Central Asian Association and the Refugee Migrant Network. Then also with teachers working in migrant education to learn from their expertise and experience on what's really needed in the classroom. Next, and equally as important, we asked the migrants themselves about their own experiences. Questions like, what made you feel super challenged when you arrived? What were the most difficult situations from the perspective of communication? What did you want and need the most? And are there any cultural or health issues that you needed to express urgently? So it's worth noting that actually this program isn't exclusively for migrants who have just arrived. One librarian pointed out to us that it's also useful for people who have lived in Australia and New Zealand in their own communities for 20 years and are only just starting to learn English now. So all of the language taught is equally as useful for them. So after all this research, these are the areas that we decided to focus on. So see, there's 10 units here. We started with the ones we thought were going to be the most useful. So saying hello, which includes introductions, filling in a form, which could be registering with a dentist, talking to a doctor, money and banks, which covers opening a bank account, food shopping and asking for help, ordering food at a fast food restaurant or at a cafe and saying what you don't or can't eat, immigration, how to talk about yourself and your circumstances, finding a job, public transport, which includes directions and announcements, and also getting to know your local system, and emergencies. If you have to call emergency services, what to say and what you might hear. So as I'm going through this list, you can see how all of these topics are immediately relevant to any newcomer and useful from the moment they arrive and thereafter. So each unit is made up of 3 sections. First is the practice zone for language introduction, modeling, and practice. The vocab zone here for additional and related vocabulary. And then finally, we round off with the learning zone with advice directly from other learners as well as a lesson on using tools outside the program. So it's worth saying that learning or learning to learn is one of the 5 key skills of the ACSF. It's aimed at equipping students with a range of strategies to continue their learning in this very rapidly changing environment. So the authors constructed Arrivals in English as a resource on very firm foundations, both pedagogical and experiential. Now, it would be interesting to discuss how we then isolated the key functional language, but as time is limited, let's just look at it in the context of some activities from the food shopping unit. Let me pull this up. Okay, I hope everyone can see the program okay. So let's start learning. Heading into food shopping and okay. So each unit has 8 activities in the practice zone that go through vocabulary introduction, words in context, comprehension, and then further practice. So let's start from the beginning. Okay, I'm going to start the introduction videos so you can see how we explain the unit objectives without using complex language or translation. Stomach rumbling sound always makes me a bit hungry as well. So as you can tell, our character Jenny is learning to go to the supermarket to ask and look for food. So it was essential that we could convey what learners could expect from the unit without translation, because 1, we needed to cater to everyone. And as migration populations are constantly changing, we didn't want any one language translation to be left out. And 2, even more crucially, we didn't want to have substandard translation. We couldn't get individual translators because of reason 1, and we didn't want to solely rely on AI translations, which have very variable success from language to language. So we decided to focus on animations, video, and very simple instructions. Now, looking at the new vocabulary for this unit, I'm going to click through the audio button so we can hear the word as well as see it. And then you also get a nice little picture alongside it as well.
Vegetables.
Great.
Card. Checkout.
Now you'll hear our wonderful Australian voice actor Glenn here and throughout the programme. In the New Zealand version, which is coming out shortly, you'll hear many more Kiwi accents too. So we recognise that it's going to be much, much more useful to learners to hear models of accents that are local and get used to localizations. Like my surprise when creating this, when I found out that you all say tomato sauce instead of ketchup. So I learned something new as well. Okay, moving on to exercise 2. We're going to look at words in context here. So this is exposing learners to real interactions that they might encounter while recognizing and repeating those words. So let's listen to question 1.
Can you help me?
Yes. What are you looking for?
Where are the vegetables?
Okay, let's see. These are the words we've already come across. So vegetables. Let's have a look at one more.
Can I have 6 eggs?
Here you go.
Okay, let's see. Eggs. All right, and you can see along the bottom, there's 8 questions. You just slide through each one. And then I'll mark my answers. Oh, fantastic, got it right. So you'll see here that you're not just learning what to say. You're learning also what you're going to hear. So if you're in a shop and you hear, "What are you looking for?" It's not going to be the first time that you hear it, and you'll know what to respond with too. So learning what to say and what to listen out for are equally as important. Okay, so let's go to exercise 3. We want learners to practice asking questions. So using the Clarity Recorder to record and compare their answers in this exercise is the focus. So let's try the first question. We've got a shopping list here, and I want to ask about the fruit.
Excuse me, do you have fruit?
Okay, let's give it a go. Excuse me, do you have fruit? Let's play that back. Excuse me, do you have fruit? Okay, sounds pretty good to me. But if it didn't, I could do this as many times as I wanted until I felt that I got it right. So this is a real opportunity for serious practice and giving the learners the opportunity to listen, try again, listen, try again. So I won't go through the rest of the practice zone, but you can have a look at it yourselves, as I believe Bookery is going to make the program available to you. You can continue on with the trial for the next couple of weeks or so. But Ian will confirm that at the end. So now into the vocab zone. Let's go here, and I want to see other shopping. So in the practice zone, we focused on food shopping, but of course, people want to buy other items too. So in the vocab zone, this is where we introduce new and related vocabulary learners can sub into the functional phrases that they learnt in the practice zone. So you'll notice some of these words are more challenging than from the first activity, but this is just a reminder that we're equipping our learners for real life. Some essential words are going to be way in advance of their technical level. For example, question 7, light bulb. Light bulb is a B1 word. But if we're going to teach learners vocabulary progressing according to their CEFR level, they would have to do around 200 hours of English before they could buy washing powder. So while most of the vocabulary is A1 level, our authors have included some essential items too. And finally, let's head to the learning zone. So I want to play you a video from Ding. Here. Open that up.
My name is Dave. I'm from Hong Kong. This is my learning tip. When you're in the shop, talk to the cashier.
Thank you, Ding. So we videoed 10 migrants giving their personal advice to newcomers, and one of these short videos is in every single unit, because it was important that learners understand that arrivals in English is grounded in the experience of their peers. I think that wraps up the demo here. So let me head back here. So that's a little taste of what to expect in Arrivals in English. So while we want this all to be really fun and useful and motivating, we also want to give learners the greatest opportunity to improve. So whether they want to practice with their peers in the library or continue their practice alone at home, being able to access the program on different devices is key. So Arrivals in English can be used on desktop and laptop if they have access. It can be used on tablet, but most importantly, it runs on mobile. So that means that whenever they have a few spare minutes, they can pull out their phones and put in a bit of practice. And it also means if you're on the bus, on the way to the shops, you can put in some just-in-time revision so you feel much more confident when you get there. This was a community-developed project built for those looking to build community. It's so easy to feel helpless at the beginning of this journey, much like the coffee shop situation that we heard from Andrew at the beginning of the talk. But there's an achievable goal to aim for, or rather it's a long series of small achievable goals. We hope that Arrivals in English will be able to help people in their day-to-day lives and be a tool for empowering individuals and building community.